Today, I am really excited to have Sayantan Mukhopadhyay on the podcast. Sayantan is currently the general manager of Nubank, a technology company that is challenging the status quo to create a new generation of financial services in Latin America. Sayantan first started his career as a software engineering consultant at Accenture before hopping into data science and analyst roles at Twitter. He started off as an analyst for global ops and then later became the head of sales analytics. He then became a product manager for their internal tools and core ads teams. He then joined Pinterest and became their product lead for the ads delivery team. And then after Pinterest, he joined Facebook to join the market dynamics team. From there, he joined as a product director at Nubank. Outside of these positions, Sayantan is also a guest lecturer at the product school and a mentor for Fast Track. Talking to Sayantan was great because I got to get insight into Nubank, a company that not enough people in North America are talking about, but is set to not only take over the Latin America stage like they already have, but take over the global stage in finance. It was also really interesting to hear his stories of how he bounced around from different companies, his thoughts on what leadership in those different roles look like, and to get some perspective in how ads are delivered in social media companies. With that said, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey Sayantan, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Daivik.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on and get into your experiences and especially get into your experiences at Nubank. But before we dive into all of that, I wanted to get started with what brought you to the world of technology and product building.
So I think those are two little different questions. What brought me to technology, and as many product managers, I didn't start as a product manager. I so basically just like super quick. Like I started like after like a lot of people like undergrads in tech, and then I went to work for a company in India and Singapore for a couple of years, and I moved to the Bay Area to go to school in Berkeley back in 2012. And 2012 was a really interesting time. There a lot of startups, a lot of companies, a lot of like, I think social medias were kind of the rave at that point with like
Right.
um, Facebook doing great, Twitter, LinkedIn, and like there are a lot of like there's a lot of social buzz overall. So what happened is like ended up taking a few classes, and Berkeley was really fun as a graduate school because a lot of work was like actually building some products and prototypes and like uh, getting rejected and then like applying for like lean startup and stuff like that. So that's where I started getting interested into building things in terms of like building solutions of real life problems of things that um, can add value and create um, jobs or create employment or set whatever you call it. But after graduation I ended up going to work for Twitter, but more as an analyst and data scientist. And after a couple of years at Twitter, when I was leading a like analytics team, we realized that just building the analytical solutions are not enough because putting into the basically workflow of the business users is important. So my team started building like uh, some some small internal products, and obviously didn't have headcount for that. So I ended up being the product manager. So that's my first like real foray into product management. And interesting enough, the solution we are building could be a pretty like a um, basically it's a sales and marketing qualification tool and like process management and planning for sales cycle, etc. So there are definitely like few hundred startups possible in the market right now in that domain.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was interested primarily into that, I mean, taking a step back again from the very early on in my academic journey, even is like how people make decisions and how we can apply intelligence into making decisions. So, so that brought me to it got me interested in AI and ML and stuff like that. So, when the opportunity arose to like um, join the product team, um, the main thing I considered is that um, product people are possibly the people where the buck stops, because they are kind of responsible for uh, ensuring that the organization is making the right decision. It's not their job to make the right decision, but it's their job to make sure that the organization is making the right decision about the investments, or about the process, like the stages of development, the investments, so on and so forth. So I was comfortable in my role with like a 8 9 people reporting to me, two teams, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that it's not long term, like challenging enough for me. So I literally told um, one of our, like, I don't want to drop names because that sounds weird, but um,
Fair enough.
like our CRO at that point was that, hey, I want to quit this role and try this new role, because in my current role you can't fire me even if I do a okay. I will do an okay job, and
Yeah.
you can't fire me. So I want to try this role, because if I fuck up this product, or if I don't do good in this, like making, like building the right things, etc., you can hold me accountable and possibly you can fire me. So that's how I got into product, and that was 2017. So it's like 6 years almost at this point, 6 7 years. um, and I was very clear that I wanted to go into the areas of AI and ML. So I ended up joining for the Twitter. We used to call this revenue science team, which is basically the back end of ad tech, all the uh, AI ML models, marketplace, auction, etc. And it was fun. It was fun. A lot of interesting things from there on.
Right. Right. No, that's so interesting. I've always heard of people being like, I wanted to be more responsible for the product and go for responsibility. But I've never heard somebody say, "Hey, I want to go to the product management because I want to be able to get fired." But I guess both of them go hand in hand, right? Like the more responsibility you have and the more challenges you take on, the more likely that if you fail, that falls on you. So having that ownership is definitely a double-edged sword, but I think wanting to have more, I think in that from that perspective is something I feel like a lot of product managers or a lot of people who go from engineering to product managers is something that they share. So it's really interesting to hear that perspective, and it's a fun story. But I think it's definitely something I can relate to just based on my own story and other people's conversations. And yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that another thing is ads is a very interesting domain for many
Hmm.
different reasons, because especially like in a situation like Twitter, and obviously my next employers, like all of them were um, kind of in a B2B2C business. Like in one hand I'm talking to like the CMOs, on the other hand I'm talking to like the people who are upset about seeing some ad. So basically like balancing these two ends of the situation at any given point, being in that role was really rewarding for me to like understand motivation, etc. But at the same time also,
Hmm.
like, I mean, this is literally how these companies make money. So you have this pretty large pressure on you to like deliver and improve like the revenue or margin, whatever. And so I think that I have been really lucky to getting into this domain early on in my product career, and also like getting a chance to work with some of the brightest guys. I mean, this is a very interesting problem to some degree on a different end. Is like ads possibly attract and has some of the most like smartest people in the business, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like what, like from a, I mean, obviously an internet runs on ads, so I'm not going to trash ad, but at the same time sometimes like fun to not think about is like if all these like all of my friends and colleagues and seniors and superiors I have worked with in this domains of ads, if they all came together to solve some of the more, like, I don't know, like pressing human problems, um, what would have happened? I don't know.
True. I mean, a lot. I know a lot of people also talk about that, and not to trash this realm of things, but like with hedge funds and quant funds, I know a lot of people have say the exact same thing, where they hire the best of the best, at least technically, to further their algorithms. But what if we just took that collective talent and put it into something even more pressing? But it is what it is. Of course, you want your best people on the money makers, and so it just makes sense. But yeah, I mean, well, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But when we go specific into some of your prior experience, but one thing I found really interesting is just you've pursued a lot of different areas. You pursued a lot of you started off as more of an analyst, and then you went into product management, and of course, you've gone a little bit from company to company. So I was just wondering, like, when it comes to like finding out what to pursue next, what has been your sort of guiding principles, and what has been your thought process?
So, um, I I can give a made up answer, but and I can tell you that, okay, and there's this like um, framework I follow of like my intersection of like interest and people and who pays me and what my skills and so on and so forth. But I think those are those are not actually like how the stories act, like stories happen. I'll tell you a
Right.
funny story, but then I will actually tell you that what I mean, or how I have been trying to approach the situation, uh, or these moves. One is that the funniest story is like I used to literally live in the building which was the backside of the Pinterest building for
Okay.
2 years. And the recruiter
Okay.
reached out to me and was like, "Hey, this person wants to talk to you. Do you want to talk to this person?" And I was like, "Hey, I want to check what they serve for breakfast, so why not?" So I showed up for the
Right.
8 a.m. meeting to like check what their breakfast is, and that's how I spoke to a couple of people at Pinterest. Again, I think at Twitter at that point I was relatively um, comfortable. I mean, in terms of,
Right.
I think after you be in a company for 4 years or something, and you um, be around in a couple of different places, you get comfortable. So I was like, okay, let's try something. Let's try this place, and it's not even a mile. It's like a minute. The recruiter reached out, just like, hey, do you want to talk to us? And I was like, okay, hell no, why not? I mean, I can um, I mean, I'll try what their breakfast is, and that's how I ended up in the Pinterest building. And the conversations went well. I liked the people, and I was like, okay, let's go to this place. But um, I think from Pinterest onwards, I have been trying something else. I have been trying to basically different companies that are at different stages of their journey or life cycle. And um, so from like Pinterest, I joined. So basically, Twitter, I joined after 6 months of their IPO, and I was there for 4 years. And the journey of Twitter
Mhm.
at that point was kind of like a sinusoidal curve. Like 2014 and 20 beginning of 2015, Twitter was growing like crazy. Like the stock price was soaring. We were opening office in everywhere. Then we started declining, and we hit like $14 stock price. And then from there, it's like a 2 year journey to like go back to the level like 40 or something. So that whole journey of like, and the post IPO expectations from companies, and obviously many companies falter to meet that. I mean, from Uber to like Twitter to Pinterest to Facebook, like everyone you can see, like, and then there's a process of like behaving as a public company and getting more disciplined in your like financials, in your fiduciary, etc. So it's a different type of journey that you need to like carry forward in that. um, so I
Mhm.
did that at Twitter, and I joined Pinterest a year before Pinterest went public. So there's a lot of things to build and a lot of things to basically get to a point where investors found it uh, investment worthy, and continuing that momentum to some degree. But then I could see that Pinterest it's just a cycle that they're possibly going to hit. And at that point, not I mean, the opportunities I had in front of me, couple of them were again like either pre-Pinterest or Twitter, or it was something that is like a much more established and big company. And I really wanted to work either in one of the fangs, not because of the label necessarily, but they have way more established processes and systems and tools and people. And I think all of those are incredibly valuable, to develop myself as a professional. So I really had
Right.
an amazing opportunity to work with some of the uh, very complex and amazing, like complex problems and amazing people at Facebook, which is amazing. And then although my Facebook stint was small, I really enjoyed and I really learned a lot from that experience. What I and I think that my reason of moving on from Facebook to some degree can be validated by what is happening right now at Facebook in terms of how big the organization is and how impactful you can be in such a big organization. And
Right.
so in case of Nubank, it's a very different story altogether. I mean, this company like has been growing at an astronomical pace, has been and still like there are tons of things to be built fundamentally, from technology to people to process to everything. And obviously, I knew a couple of people at Nubank, with whom I have worked before and known before. Um, some of the product leadership, etc., were quite impressive. And so this whole opportunity of learning a different economics, a different domain, but at the same time, the opportunity to contribute with the experience I have had in the Bay Area tech or Silicon Valley tech to a different part of the world, and building a group of uh, like one of the most successful fintech company in the world ever, possibly, and hopefully a financial organization in the world ever,
Mhm.
possibly, was enticing. So, and that's how I pursued the opportunity at Nubank. And then, furthermore, at Nubank, I started as a PM, like a product director, and we were doing a couple of. I was taking care of a couple of different areas, but then. Um, More recently, I moved to a general manager role, and that's again going back to the accountability part. The responsibility part is like, which is very important to me personally, that how I am actually contributing to the bottom line of the company. And I literally have like
Right.
P&L responsibility. I literally have like people responsibility, finance responsibility, those kind of things. So that opportunity that Nubank, I have, is also very fascinating, and hopefully I can make good use of it.
Right. Right. No, I think that's super interesting, and I think first off, I think it's very interesting how you got that Pinterest opportunity, living right beside it. But you know what? On a related note, though, I think, especially right now in this remote first world, too many people are like, "Hey, I'm just gonna work wherever I want to, and just go on like that," and that's fine. That's totally okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I still think there's something to be said of being in the right place at the right time. And I'm still personally of the opinion, and that's why I'm here, that Silicon Valley, in terms of building technology, is still like, if that's your goal and you want to make high level moves in that area, then I don't think there's a better place for it. And I think there is a value of being here.
No,
So it's
absolutely.
very interesting to
Yeah,
hear your
absolutely.
your
Yeah,
your
I,
story
I
with
100%
Pinterest.
agree with that. I think that there are few things. I mean, there are definitely like lots of papers written about it, like comparing like Silicon Valley with like Boston area, etc. I mean, one of the seminal paper was from Anne Saxenian, who was um, the dean of my department at Berkeley. So, but I think the most important part, which I find in that which is fascinating to me about Silicon Valley, is that the concentration of global talent in a like 100 square mile area. And I think in last few generations, or in like last few hundred of years. I mean, this is unprecedented. And at the same time, I think this whole
Yeah,
the community basically makes you a much better professional. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have my colleagues and my mentors and my teachers and my friends. And I'm super 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 grateful to, like, I don't know, at least 50 or 100 people who have helped me in many different ways. So yeah, absolutely agree, 100% agree.
for sure. Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's a testament that the big companies are still here too, because for them, operating costs are still very much more expensive to be here, but they see that, as still an opportunity. Just like, it still makes sense for them to be here in the long run. So yeah, no, super interesting. That was just a small point that I saw there, but it's just been interesting to see, how your mindset changed as I think, especially as you've gone different experiences, what you've been looking for has changed as well. Where something like Twitter post IPO especially was very young, so I think, wanting to get understand how proper processes work pushed you towards more of a bigger company. When you're at a bigger company, now that you know the process, having that ownership and that responsibility on a level that a big company can't do, no matter what level you're on, honestly. um that's where it pushed you next, so that's super interesting to see, and makes a lot of sense as
Thank
as you gain experience. So yeah. um yeah, I think, talking about Nubank now and talking about your experience building a Nubank. So, and we talked a little bit about this before the podcast, but I was looking into startups. I was looking into some of the new companies on the scene, and I ran into Nubank. And the more I read into Nubank, I was like, "What is going on here? Why is nobody in tech talking about this huge fintech startup in LATAM that is just popping off?" And it's completely grounded in technology. So it's not like it's not related to technology. It's a technology company in fintech. So yeah, for our viewers, to give them a little bit of background before we get into it, Nubank's a fintech startup that essentially is revolutionizing digital banking within Latin America. It first came onto the scene in 2013, but it's already the largest fintech bank in Latin America, which is huge in the 10 years to become that. And it has over 75 million users, and it's growing a lot. That 75 million users statistic that I got is probably already outdated. So super exciting work, and I'm really excited to get into it. But first, starting off, when you think about Nubank's position in the market, what do you think really set them apart from other players in the space, and captures a big user
So,
base?
I
Sorry,
mean,
go for it.
just to understand, like when Nubank came into the scene back in 2013, it was basically the story is like as it's told. I mean, Davi, who is our CEO, it was actually an investor with Sequoia, and he had real trouble opening bank account back in Brazil in his business trip, and he was like, okay, this cannot be this hard, and it has to be simpler. And he teamed up with a small but mighty
Mhm.
group of people, and they just decided that, hey, I mean, all this bureaucracy and red tapes we have, how we can remove some of them and bring the product to the people. Now, some of the statistics, if you look at like Latin America, I mean, is astonishing. Like, even today in Mexico, less than 20% of the population has credit card. I mean, it's crazy to believe, right? So the what we
Right.
what Nubank has been all about is going closer to the users, understanding what you need, basically building what makes it an appealing bank and product for them. It's obviously had some first mover advantage, but from there on, like all the like there are tons of competition in the market, but still what we can do better than the others is basically we are not in the business for a month or a quarter. We are here for building long term value. So the way we have been writing credit, the way we have been building our customer experience, the way we have been positioning our brand, which is closer to people. And it's literally like if you go to Brazil, Nubank is a phenomenon. I mean, in terms of like I have been to like Rio beaches where a guy is selling hat and showing me the card, or I'm in a restaurant in Sao Paulo, and the waitress comes over and they're like, "Hey, see, I have this card and I want the better card. Can you help me to get the better card given you work there?" So it's actually a product for the mass. It's not a product necessarily for a chosen few or the highest end customers, etc. Not now, that's where we started. And from there on, what we have been able to do, or what we're very disciplined way trying to do, is how we can capture the needs of the users in five different financial seasons, from spending, saving, investing, borrowing, and then insuring. So the whole cycle of the financial journey is something that we are trying to cover one by one, and while giving the most advantageous value proposition to them, right? So I think our customer
Right.
obsession, and something is like very inspiring, and this is something which is, I don't know, I mean, how many people do it on a regular basis. Like, even today, like if there is an complaint on LinkedIn about Nubank, hey, Nubank, like I've been defrauded, or this is my extra charge, or why I'm not receiving my card, etc., you will see literally David, who is our CEO, will jump in and is like, "Hey, can you ping me, DM me, and I will personally work on it to like fix it." Um, our entire
Right.
or a large portion of the leadership base at the CEO, that's like C-suite level, spends few hours every month, like doing customer experience calls and understanding that how, what are their pain points,
Right.
what the experience, etc. So, and none of these things are done from a point of view of like, hey, we need to capture like more market share, etc. And I think all of these are like public in investment reports, our filings, etc. But there, I mean, we grew like more than 15 million users last year, 15 million, which is uh, a pretty high number. Like if you compare that to like any like banks, not only US but Europe, or even like subcontinent, etc., like the populous parts of the world, even. And only like 25% of it was from paid marketing, rest all were organic or from members. So our customer acquisition cost overall is
Right.
a fraction of what our competitors need to do. And at the same time, like we
Hmm.
have been, the other thing which is interesting, and this is um, very fascinating to think about, is that 2014 to even recently, Brazil possibly had one of the worst recession and one of the worst financial climate overall. This is not a market we are talking about, which is
Right.
stable as like Scandinavia or even US or Canada or like developed world. It's a very like economically, politically, like a area that has a lot of like sees a lot of ups and downs. But the resiliency we have been able to build in our
Right.
business, um, through like I would say disciplined decision making, but at the same time, like again, going and learning from the customers that, hey, what do you need and what, how we can add value to you. I think that has been the secret sauce of like why we are like consistently ahead of our competitors.
For sure. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's very interesting. I think we've seen a lot of like a whole crop of companies come up with this brand marketing that they are for the people, and only it's not only marketing though. It's like legitimate. They're legitimately putting their company around that. They're restructuring their company where you don't think of banking only being run by corporate entities. There's this new player that actually feels like it cares about the people that they're servicing. Um, and I think it goes such a long way in establishing yourself. So I think one of the examples I think of on a tangential note, but with very similar returns, is something like Neo in China. Uh, Neo is now ingrained into the culture for a lot of people in China, and they have crazy events, and everybody talks about it. And because of that, even with people with a lot of people arguing like superior technology in a Tesla, for example, Neo is still the car for the people in China. um, and so it's really interesting to see, like, I think this new wave of companies are coming up that are actually focusing on the people's problems and making it a whole different experience that they haven't seen before in the past. So it's really cool to see Nubank taking advantage of that, as well as start looking more into the people's problems and looking to solve it. And I think, even in the US, but especially around the globe, based on what I've seen, a lot of legacy industries, finance being one of them, really stood on their laurels for a long time. And in the US, they're practically forced to innovate to stay competitive now. But a lot of other places like Latin America, or your a lot of places in Africa, for example, still still are at the very precipice of that, where they were a lot of financial companies were being very stagnant, and now they've realized that we have to innovate in order to stay ahead of the startups. So it's very interesting to see a new bank and how much
Yeah.
it's grown.
So, so one of the thing to understand is that a lot of finance is basically about data, and it's like how you utilize the data, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things we have been is like how, I mean, what the data tells you and how you understand, like basically like we have been able to understand the user behavior possibly better than our competitors.
Right.
So the way we could write credit models, that basically was like the people who, I mean, there's a reason for the people who are unbanked, why they're unbanked, because bank feel that they are not valuable to the bank, so they don't make an effort to make them banked. I mean, that's where it ends. Like, so, but what we have been able to do is to like write the credit model in a way that actually captures that what an actual like user behavior is going to be of our customers, and our delinquency rate, our default rate, all of those are sub much lower than our competitors, and who are not banking with this, most of these people. So I think what we have been able to do is to challenge the status quo in that order. At the same time, I think one other area, and I'm possibly mentioning about it because it's something that oftentimes people don't get treated well when they go to bank, and especially like if you're not a
Hmm.
wealthy customer. So the whole customer experience and being digital and have like same access as like, hey, I mean, you are banking with like say 10K and I'm banking with 1K. I mean, the same way I'm getting treated and what kind of value that like how I'm getting like from a respect, from a like treating
Right.
someone as someone, not as a human, not only as their what their bank balance is. This is something which is significantly different than the regular banking experience most of us have. So I think that another thing have been able has been able to like set the tone of Nubank as something that the brand has been more rooted into people, and that has been
Right.
super
That makes
helpful.
sense. And I think especially in, places with high populace, that's something you see a lot of. Unfortunately, but it just ends
Yep,
up happening because of high population. So very interesting to see that. And I
yep.
think bringing it more into the product management side of things and this product strategy side of things, like you mentioned, Nubank is innovating across many different verticals, and you mentioned that 5-step process. And so, that's very exciting, and I think it's really great to see, especially with you establishing your own ecosystem in some type of ways, where a customer can go from end to end without having to necessarily switch processes there. But I think one of the challenges with that is that when you are building products in different verticals, of course you have different leadership and different teams working on the products. So I was just wondering, like, when you think about how those different products fit together, like, how can product leaders go about balancing innovation within the respective vertical while still having products be one unified brand and being one unified front for the customer?
That's a great question, and I think there are the two different parts where the unification possibly is the most important. One is like how it's
Hmm.
happening to me, and the second is like how I'm experiencing it. So, like putting it like more normal jargon is like how the product marketing or marketing part of it is working, and the second is like what my user experience is, and do I find that okay, like this I'm using like this part of the bank now, and I'm using that part of the bank now, and what's that experience and the movements, etc., looks like. So if they're very different, so I would talk about two dimensions of it. One is like what, another is like how. So, for example, on the case of what we try to do, we follow a pretty standard process of product lifecycle
Hmm.
in terms of like reviews and like looking at the same kind of metrics, making sure that not only like product success metrics in terms of revenue or NPV and stuff like that, but more of like also like product satisfaction score and operations efficiency and operational like how many like tickets and customer response we are getting. Like we look at like all of them holistically.
Right.
When it comes to marketing, it's something similar in terms of like how we're talking about the product and like how we are taking a more like an advisory approach to them in terms of like, hey, do this because this liberates you, because new bank is about freedom, new bank is about financial independence. So we try to like make sure that our product messaging are oriented towards it. Now, I think the part which is more challenging is like how that actually can be like integrated into the product development, because, and that's where one of the things we have been doing for last few years is to invest in the like more platform solutions that different like all different product teams can tap into and use. For example, like the entire like we did a bunch of migration last couple of years to move to a single front end framework, which is again driven by the like back basically a back end Flutter kind of a uh, framework. So we every team is using the same component and standardized tools and processes. So
Right.
um, that's how we are trying to manage the what and how, to ensure that the product meets it seems like it's coming from Nubank, it's not coming from Nubank crypto, and this coming from Nubank credit, or this is coming from Nubank like we call it PJ, which is basically like the SME account.
Right. Right, that makes sense. And I think one of the interesting, especially with fintech, is that there's so many different emerging technologies and directions that you can take products. And Nubank has sort of differentiated itself by doing unconventional things compared to traditional banks in Latin America, such as not charging account maintenance fees, overdraft fees, or not subscribing necessarily to traditional marketing channels. Um, but there's also something to be said about things that just work, right? And especially in that market. So I was just wondering, when it comes to innovation, we always, of course, strive for innovation, but sometimes unbridled innovation can be a little bit dangerous as well. So I was just wondering, like, how do you choose between things that have worked in the past versus things that you believe that you need to push the envelope in and that you need to push on?
That's a great question, and this is again like an opportunity for me to share some of the fintech revolution and the fintech like paradigm shifting things happening outside US and some of the developed economies we know. So I will talk about two things here. The first one is something called
Mhm.
PIX,
Okay.
PIX. So PIX is similar to the UPI system in India, which is the money transfer system, and it is actually like it happens
Right.
in seconds. So, and it's a framework that the government built, and it's a central network, and the BASN, which is the central bank, which sponsored the whole project. And the point is like it so popular that literally you can find like panhandlers in Brazil who are asking you to just pix money, not like this is my pix ID,
Yeah.
pix me. So I think that Nubank was one of the earliest adopters of Pix, and that helped us a lot to basically understand that how users want to handle their money. They don't want to handle cash because of inconvenience of the physical nature of things, and also like security, given that certain parts of the country is not
Right.
necessarily super safe, and that's true for
Hmm.
every country. But Brazil actually has a 24-hour like money transfer system which works within
Right.
10 seconds, not nothing close nothing in the US come to that. I mean, even if you are, unless like, even if you're Venmoing or Zelly, etc., that takes few minutes or sometimes half
Right.
an hour.
Yeah.
It's within seconds. So Nubank could take advantage of, or Nubank did take good advantage of PIX, and that's one of the reasons why we saw like a pretty large, especially, and this all happened actually. Like, I mean, coincidentally, this all happened right before pandemic or right around pandemic. So a lot of like value of like having this opportunity for people to transfer money without necessarily having any physical interaction. On a similar note, another thing which is happening right now, and this did not start in Brazil, but possibly Brazil is one of the largest economy which is adopting it, is open finance. So open finance is basically a protocol where all financial institutions are basically asked to participate. And what you get by participating it is that I can ask my Bank of America that I'm participating in open finance, and now you share my data of all my transactions or whatever I'm doing with all interested banks, that so the all banks can offer me a more
Right.
competitive product, right? So that is happening in Brazil right now, where all the I mean, basically, open finance is getting adopted. It's all user-driven
Hmm.
adoption. A user basically says that, okay, I want to participate in open finance and connect my other bank accounts with Nubank, and it basically opens up a huge level playing field. But because at the end of the day, it's all about what product innovation we can drive, and it's not a and data is the key that drive innovation in
Right.
tech. So open finance is something which is extremely exciting. It definitely started in UK, but the adoption and the pace of innovation possibly we're going to experience in not only in Brazil, but we're possibly looking at the similar kind of direction in like other Latin American countries as well. And once that happens, that basically opens up huge amount of possibility for um, any player which is ready to play in this
Right.
game. And I'm really excited about that opportunity, and even like to learn and see that how that democratizes the banking space in a different order, because now the banks have to like compete to get my
Right.
business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just for my own clarity, I've actually never heard of open finance before. So is it a like a is it a low like eat like if I opt into open finance and I'm a Brazilian citizen, is it just like the local banks that get my data, or how does that work? Um,
No, you can, what whichever bank you have account to, you can like connect your, so say you have account in HSBC, or you have account in like, and you have account in Bank of America, but sorry, both I'm sorry, American Express, and say local, like say
I see.
Nubank, right? And you can connect all of them.
Oh
You
wow.
can ask like HSBC to share share your data with Nubank, and connect your American Express card to Nubank. Only like all of these banks need to participate in the open finance
Right.
protocol. And the reason they possibly want to do it, because everyone wants to get data so they can offer better product. So it's basically like enabling a huge and basically it's like it's creating like perfect competition from a banking policy
Oh
perspective.
man. Okay. I didn't know it was on a global scale. That's wow. That's wow. The possibilities of that with that is endless. That's going to be very exciting to see, and yeah, it seems like a lot of yeah that it's very interesting to see how they got buy-in from a lot of different financial institutions for that, but that's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean what, and this is where you also can create value, like for example, one of the open finance use case we have been offering to our users is about overdraft protection. Like imagine that you have two accounts, one is Chase, another is say Wells Fargo, and somehow your like phone bill is connected to Chase that you don't operate, and you are going negative balance. Now say you have open finance connected with both of the banks, and you're going to Wells Fargo and you're saying like, hey, by the way, your Chase balance is
Right.
low and you're going to get overdraft. So make a transfer from Wells Fargo to Chase so you're good. So that's the kind of value, that those are kind of use cases we are first working with, and will the users love
Right.
it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I can, off the top of my head, just spitballing after the information. I think there's, of course, you have competitive offers each bank could offer you based on that. Yes, you have scenarios like that with the overdraft fees. One of the ones I'm thinking about is credit. Because I know when I moved from Canada to the US, establishing a credit score was a big issue. So with something like open finance,
Yep.
there's probably a good way of getting around that. So wow, the possibilities are really endless there, and it's cool to see that Nubank is leading the charge in Latin America and integrations there. But I'm excited to see what other players globally will do with this technology.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this is another interesting part, right? For example, like, um the opportunity to like work with, or with building some of these foundational technologies, is something, at a at one of the world's largest economy, level, is very interesting, beyond like the fact of like, um, growth and profitability and etc. Like, um, so this is surely like, an like quite a different, and I think that one of the thing is, um, I wish that there were, I mean, there are tons of such problems and the things to be done for in the populous countries. And I'm not talking as like a righteous person or something, but I think that, I highly think that, um, I or highly suggest that if you are working in an organization where, which has a large number of footprint away from, in populous parts of the world, and you're close to it, I think you can learn a lot, and at the same time you can create a lot of value, which sometimes is hard to do, only by working on like the same economy or same area of your, uh, own experiences. So it definitely expands you as a person as
Right.
well. And one of the thing we do in New Bank is we have a work policy of like, everyone works for, say, anything between 7 to 12 weeks, wherever they want. I mean, they're home base from like, for me it's US, for my team like it can be Mexico, or Argentina or Brazil. And then we all come together for a week, and work together. Lots of planning, lots of workshops, lots of like some all hands. And so that's an opportunity to like, blend and connect as well. So I have been able to like travel to Brazil a few times, spending time there, etc. And that definitely expanded me as a person, and taught me a lot of things, which I'm super happy about the opportunity of doing that.
For sure.
It can be exhausting a
Yeah.
little, because you don't understand how far is San Francisco and Sao Paulo. It's really far.
I don't know. I think if I haven't gone to Brazil yet. It's definitely on the bucket list, but I think I'd be giddy the whole time. So the flight would feel very long, but for different reasons. Because I'm really excited to go check out Brazil. And no, definitely. Like I think what you mentioned there, of course, like working on technology in the U.S. that benefits people in the U.S. is very interesting. It's very cool, but I think some of the best technology stories I've seen, especially in the last 6 years, has been from these high populous areas. So as close to me is of course the ones growing up in India or blowing up in India, but in Latin America and Africa, um, and then in some areas in Europe as well. Like it's just so cool to see that these areas that traditionally people have pretty much written off to some degree, right, as not being able to innovate in their own domain, have really taken charge. And I think it's been very interesting for me to see this and to learn about their stories. So definitely, I think if not now, so that's definitely something I'd want to do in the future. Work on a problem that's affecting a high populous area, and I've given a lot of thought, even like returning, maybe going to India for a bit and working on problems that affect that general population there. So, very cool
Yeah.
stuff. I think we've definitely talked about Nubank a lot, and I really appreciate it. I really love getting that insight into it. And yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your experiences outside of Nubank. You like I mentioned and like mentioned and like a lot of people have probably already seen. You have a lot of experience all over Silicon Valley, working at some of the biggest tech companies, and when there were at their infancy stage or when they were right at the growth stage. So one of the questions I had for you was that, throughout your experience, you've worked both on internal tools and external facing features, and I think, as a product manager, everybody has their preferences of what they like. But I think even beyond that, when you're catering towards users and a certain populace, there's a way you have to alter yourself as a product manager. And so I was just wondering, like, how have you effectively been able to transfer your skills, whether it be in an internal facing tool or external facing tool, and past experiences into these different domains and leading new products?
That's a really interesting question, and I will again. I mean, I only stand on the shoulders of the giants I have been close to.
Mm,
Uh, so one of my uh, favorite person as a product manager is this guy. His name is David Gaska, and David currently leads the privacy products for Google. So Dave Gaska, he had a theory, and the theory basically is like the job of a product manager is to ship, and you use some of the core. So basically, he had this like concept of like concentric circles. So the core of it was something like product design, engineering, and business, like some basic things. The second level of things were like something around team and culture building,
mhm,
and the next one is like value creation, and the last is like shipping or like creating value for the users. So I think for me, that's pretty much has been the like understanding why I'm building something, what I'll achieve if I build it. Like if I'm building a internal tool for lead qualification, what my end goal,
right.
and if I am building an interface that allows someone to take their selfies faster so they can complete registration few seconds faster, what's the goal? So in both of the cases, there is an optimization function, or there is an um, like some kind of value I can associate that with. So I kind of try to like understand what I'm trying to achieve and work backward from it.
Hmm.
Now, definitely, there are a few things which are interesting in this process. One is that in some places you can experiment faster because you have a large population. In some cases, the experiments are slower
Right.
because it's only a couple of hundred people who are using your internal tool. In some places, the adoption is faster because you can go and make everyone like install your plugin that you have built and force them to use it. In
Yeah.
some places, it's like a lot of effort to see that if users are actually using the feature that you have built or not. So I think those are definitely like some more like features, not bugs, of different types of products.
Yeah.
But I think one of my favorite thing to do is to basically seeing people using it in terms of like users test, like the whole user testing, like I mean, old school user acceptance testing at the end of your software development is something that I try to do that by stages, and to understand that, okay, like, will I use it? Will I be happy using it? And then is the user is actually happy using it? Now, obviously, there is difference between like stated preference and revealed preference, and I'm not getting into the bias correction of those two. But for me, at the end of the day, understanding why I'm doing it, understanding what the user wants and if the user actually going to use my product or not, and then like build iteratively and experiment,
Right.
um, rather than trying to build the most shiniest object in the room that no one wants to use.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny. When you mentioned for like you install an extension and you force your users to use it, the reason I laughed is because I've seen that scenario so many times, and it's just such a interesting, especially if it's an internal tool. If it's an external
Yeah,
tool, you'll see whatever outrage you'll see, but especially when it's an internal tool, you'll get like messages going directly to you, like what is happening, what are you doing, why is this there? And hopefully if you did a good job, like 2 or 3 weeks later they'll appreciate what you built. But it's just so funny that like first week
but
or two
I
weeks.
I can tell that I have built some awful tools as well as internal tools that I made people use it, and then I mean I after like when that was built, and I was like, I am never going to do it again. So uh, I distinctly remember my team built a contact correction tool. So basically, like, we had this like thousands of like contacts from. So for example, say for Twitter had this like business with, let's say, it, it never existed, but let's for fun sake of it, like had business with Tesla, and they say there are like 70 people from Tesla is in our contact book, and 30 of them have left the company, and 20 of them are still active, and whatever, blah blah blah. So my team built a small tool to like do that correction, but it was a very poorly built tool, and we could do all of that inside Salesforce itself. We didn't need a new tool, but given some executive wanted a new tool, we just built a new tool and we forced people to use it. So
Yeah.
anyways, everyone has those stories.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been there, and typically when those products release, or even when I'm working on it, that's when I'm like, you know what? I think it's time for a change. I think I think it's time to explore the ocean, see what else is out there, because it can be really brutal, especially when you're a product manager and you're really putting your soul into it, into like creating something, but you don't like you just know it's our dead on release. It's brutal. So no, that's definitely very interesting, and it's good to hear about the only one who experiences that sometimes. So um but yeah, no, I think that's very exciting and very interesting.
Another thing on that one, and this is, I guess, is useful for regardless.
Hmm.
I am a big believer of failing fast. So rather than like understanding with like little by little by little, is like rather than death by like thousands cut, I'm more like of a camp of like, let's try, let's go all in. If you'll find out that if it works, if it doesn't work, and we pivot. So that's my philosophy normally, rather than like um and I'm mentioning this because you mentioned about this like
Yeah.
this failure situation.
Hmm.
Faster you can identify that you're most likely gonna fail, faster you will try to either save that or change it, and I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where V1 sort of was done on release, but V2, if you can get around to V2, is a crazy product. Like it's a huge product, so you never know. You never know what you can do from those lessons from failures. So yeah, I think moving on. I before I let you go, just I wanted to talk about your time at the ads teams, at these
Yeah.
several social media platforms, and you worked at Twitter, you worked at Pinterest, and at a time where I would classify it as some of their biggest time of growth, especially in 2012. It feels like we were at the precipice of really exponential growth, and these platforms becoming huge. So I was just wondering, like, when you were working over there, and you were working on defining different products, what were some important trends and developments that you saw shaping advertising at the time, and how do you think you tried capitalizing on them?
So I think a few things. One is, let me like make sure that I hit the most important ones. Um, so if you see like the overall, the main few things happened in the ads apart from the like macroeconomic move towards like digital business, and like every year you could see like the decline of the traditional media, and then the like this, I think, till like couple of years back you would see this like reports of like um TV budget is decreasing and digital budget is increasing, and this is kind of current shift. And so I think that news is like not anymore. Like everyone is like, okay, I mean, whatever, like everything is digital. Who cares? Like who is advertising on TV? Who watches TV?
Right.
There's like, I think you remember maybe this whole time of like cord cutters, and then there's like the moving from like newspaper to like what's the parallel, like, so there's like a lot of this kind of thought pieces would come off from like different media outlets all the time. And um, but I think I would say there are two main drivers of this situation that helped it. One is that um, definitely like retargeting advertisement,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that who like the basically digital footprinting of the user, and then target them with like the hey, you left it here, you checked it here, do you want to buy it, do you want to buy it, do you want to buy it. So this whole retargeting was a huge thing. And the second thing was basically being able to capture some of the uh, production level like implementation of machine learning algorithms for personalization
Right.
and ranking.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I would say like those two things were huge drivers from a fundamental perspective of like why that uh, like astronomic surge or this overtake happened. But if you say that the main changes, I mean, on later on, I think same vein, I think the the most important one possibly in last couple of years happened is that the direction towards privacy. And from iOS 14.5 to GDPR iOS 14.5, later on, like every country, like CCPA, this whole like, hey, like rampant digital footprinting is not okay.
Right.
Like you,
Yeah.
like users and their consent and their data matters. So I think that that's kind of the the most interesting shift which has happened. But at the same time, I think the perception of privacy has also changed in the last couple of years, where I think the I think the reservation of like how much people thought of that their privacy and their data etc matter, I think that has reduced quite a bit because of some of these tools. But there's also like people have become more comfortable with like leaving vast amount of digital footprint and just coming to live with the fact that okay, people know where I am and what I do. I mean, it's not so
Right.
shocking anymore. But I can tell you how far I know, like no device actually listens to you and then translates that to your digital ads feed. It doesn't happen.
Right.
It's a statistically the plausible like event that occurs sometimes by accident. It's not like an like Alexa is listening to you and then showing you ads on Amazon when you're on Amazon Prime or something like that. That doesn't happen. Um,
I don't know. I've
so
seen enough. I've seen enough. I've seen enough moments of it though. But no, of course, yeah, that makes sense.
I, I mean, honestly, like how many potentially big brands or big spenders at any given point, um, like advertising substantially um, that can be shown. So, any case, I think, taking a step back on the ad side of things, I think to me those two were big waves. But more recently, I think what we are seeing that um, ads are basically the whole shopping ads and the retail ads. I think that's a huge new frontier
Mhm.
along in on like Google shopping ads or Facebook shopping ads, and then within Amazon, the whole like that frontier is just gonna grow and grow because if you cannot digital footprint people based on their like retargeting, but shopping is the place where you know that the most like high confidence intent of the user,
Right.
and your conversion rates are possibly going to be much better, etc.
Right.
um, and the last thing is that I think the creator economy has I have seen like up like a lot of interesting events like for example like Twitter doing NFL live streaming in 2016. That was the first like live streaming happening on any social media,
Okay.
from like thousands of creators on Pinterest. Definitely Facebook was a very different league than to like obviously like WeChat and Baidu and etc. Like the whole social marketing etc. And that in China and obviously like in Korea, and it's going to like it's just becoming adopted everywhere. Um, I think the whole, I mean, we don't know, to be honest, that like how how scalable, etc., that is, because it's still quite a long tail of any such like this creator economy, similar to any such business. But I think the next immediate frontier seems like shopping plus retail ads, etc.
Right.
That's going to be relevant for next couple of years. um,
Right.
so that's my guess.
Right. That makes sense. No, I think, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting how the companies compete. I mean, of course, you have government crackdowns on privacy, and you also have the device manufacturers now. Like Apple always makes such a big deal every time they hold an event about privacy, and it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic like formula shifts in the future, especially as everybody's going into more digital services. Like I mentioned the Apple example. uh, they always take the stance on privacy, but at the same time they still have personalization on the App Store and their own services. So every company is going to have to it's going to shift a lot, I think, especially as the EU and as the government step in as well. So it's going to be a very interesting space, and I think
I mean, at
yeah.
the same time, what you will see possibly, like every, like from Uber to Instacart to like DoorDash to everyone, is investing a ton in ads, because I mean, ads is the most profitable, scalable business at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So you will see like more and more like publishers in the established apps, like no matter like which domain you're talking about, from like Spotify to, I don't know, like I mean, obviously like anything. So it's it's gonna be. I mean, I think ads is not gonna go away.
Right.
Simple. And in terms of like, um, and at the same time, like personally identifiable, like being able to identify exactly this person bought this item here at this price, hence I can retarget this person with that. Like that whole like data heaven in of 2016, 17, 18, I think that is not going to come back. So there has
Right.
to be a lot of investment in this
Yeah.
area of technology, so the all the publishers can claim that they have like causally contributed to the conversion and can take credit for it. So that will happen. I mean, those are the new areas of technology, like privacy preserving technologies, etc., that is going to get a lot of investment. um, so yeah, I mean, that those are the things I guess will be interesting to see in next couple of years.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, just wrapping up now. Uh Last question I have before, I or second last question I have is, what is a book that you recommend reading or us checking out?
Um, I'm trying to talk about a book which is very. I mean, I think it's very well known. At the same time, I think one should consider reading if you're in product or tech or something. And the book is "Thinking Fast and Slow" from Daniel Kahneman.
Hmm.
I think it's a very, very, very foundational book to understand that at the end of the day, we are building things, or we are dealing with, or we are individually irrational people who cannot make statistically correct rational decisions. And we are driven by emotion, fear, greed,
Hmm.
longing, all the scenes, etc. And being able to logically make correct decision is not a strength that we have. So
Right.
knowing those limitations, how we can um, build things and create value, is, I think, is valuable. So I was thinking about this question since you shared some of the topics with me in the past, but that's a book I would say that you should consider checking. And if it's a long book, it's a like 30, 40 chapters, but there's some
Right.
videos if you want to check.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting, and I think yeah, I think one of the things people who are technical fall into, and myself included, is we get so caught up in the technicalities of like how fast things are running, or we just get very caught up in the technical realm of things that we don't think about the more soft things that can't just be measured, right? Those soft areas. But that is fundamentally what makes products. So as a product manager, it's essential in your job, and even as an engineer or anywhere, I think it's something that you should be considering. So yeah, no, I think I'll definitely check out that book. I haven't actually gotten around to it yet, so definitely will make sure to do that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that one. And the last question I have before I let you go is, what are the next steps for you and Nubank? What can we look forward to?
Next step for me, possibly my next vacation. But on a, I don't know. It's. I mean, I think we have quite a few interesting things we are working on. Also, that the the whole world is going through possibly a really interesting time of like getting in terms with ChatGPT and Midjourney, and I just like was looking at one other applications today which can generate like more like the lexica, which can generate like fashion design, like it's basically can generate like fashion designer level like ideas, etc. So
Oh
I
man,
think it
okay.
will be. I'm interesting. We are exploring some of these opportunities. So that's something I'm excited about. That what we can build using these new technological advancements for our users.
Okay, no, that's super exciting to see, and I mean, you guys are already leading in innovation in LATAM, so of course, after LATAM comes the world. So hopefully, you guys can continue on your trajectory.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, let's see what happens. I think every company, every startup and big company is going to start incorporating AI technologies on a much bigger scale than they have in the past. So it's not only you guys a new bank. I think every other company is also going to release something along those lines. But the implementation will be such a big deal about it. So I'm sure under your guidance, the implementation will be great, and I'm excited to see that.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much, Sayantan, for coming on the podcast.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed talking to you about this, and yeah,
Thank you, Daivik, for having me, and it was super fun talking about my stories. And hey, yeah, I mean, let's keep in touch.
perfect. Well, for anybody listening, thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.